So today is April 13th, Sunday of year 2025, and this is JJ Allen, your host for Ghost Stories with JJ Allen. Today we've got a great special guest. This is Marty Seibel, and I'm going to let him introduce all the things he does because I didn't write it all down, so we're good to go.
Well, thank you, JJ. Yes, my name is Marty Seibel. I am the owner of the Ghost of Stanton Walking Ghost Tours. We've been doing ghost tours here in Stanton for 18 years now, going into our 18th season.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. I'm also the founder and director of a paranormal group called Raven Paranormal. We've been together since 2005. I've actually been a paranormal investigator, though, since the year 2000. So 25 long years.
It's been a while since you're very dedicated to it. And you and I talked briefly before we started recording here, and that is a lot of dedication because I had a very small group we talked about before, didn't quite make it, and it's okay. You know, things work out, sometimes they don't. But I guess I'm going to ask you the first question here. What inspired you to get into this research?
Well, I'll tell you, I've always, ever since childhood, had a big interest in history, hauntings, ghost stories. I mean, I watched, you name it, Dark Shadows when I was a kid.
I remember Dark Shadows.
Into paranormal programs in the 90s and stuff. There was a show called, lost my train of thought with that.
There were, so if you're starting off with the 70s, mm-hmm. I was talking to another gentleman that, in the mid-70s you had Dark Shadows. And I also remember, and I've been a weirdo, I'll call myself a weirdo, but I remember that there was a show called UFO mm-hmm. that was out where they kind of investigated the UFOs from the FBI, I think it was. Mm-hmm. This is probably about mid-70s or whatnot. And then there was another one in the early, golly, I can't remember the vampire thing with, I can't remember that actor's name. I liked him. It was good. But, the only time we got in the 70s that we got a taste of horror or supernatural was like, the old Friday night movies, they would have some, semi-cool stuff in there, maybe around Halloween time about vampires and whatnot. But I think that most everyone that is listening, because they're interested to listen, and I do appreciate that, just love the idea of ghost stories or of hauntings. So within that, have you experienced personal trauma, I will say, with a haunting as a child or young person? Or
Well, actually, to go back earlier, the show I wanted to mention earlier was Sightings in the early 90s. I don't know if you remember that.
Sightings.
That was a big paranormal show. They covered everything from hauntings to UFOs to cryptids, everything.
Yeah, I was big with Sightings. I do remember that.
Yeah, with Tim White.
Yeah.
It slipped my mind, but yeah, that just came back. Now, as far as personal experiences before I got into this, no, I really had not.
Really?
I had not. I had a huge interest, but I had not had anything that really affected me per se. But since I've got into the field now over the course of years and investigating, I have had personal experiences. Not a ton. I probably miss a lot. I always joke around, and this is just a personal belief of myself that I talk about a little bit on our ghost tours. But my girlfriend and I actually started our what I'll call paranormal excursions back in the early 2000s, just to go to a haunted place, a B&B or whatnot, and, just enjoy it for what it was, the history. And I always kind of, from my research and I guess my personal beliefs, I always kind of felt like women are more in tune with things, their senses and everything that go on around them. Mm-hmm. I know that's absolutely the case with Lisa. She's paying attention to everything, everyone, and picking up on that. And me, I'm kind of like just looking straight ahead or something, or I might check my phone for a ball score. You know what I'm saying? I'm big into sports, and I probably have missed a ton of stuff over the years. I always joke around about that. But most of my personal experiences all involve audio. I refer like a disembodied voice. And
isn't that really interesting? Because I've done the same thing. We actually went. It was actually Mint Spring, Virginia, south on 11. We investigated a home, beautiful brick place. Now this was 1830 something.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Had been modernized inside. And one of the coolest things, I got there early and I had my little handy dandy digital recorder. And this has been a while ago, okay? Mm-hmm. And I walked into, evidently it looked like at the time like a horse stable area or a blacksmith shop. Mm-hmm. And I walked in there and it was dark and it was getting evening time. And I said, is there anybody in here? Hey, can you hear me? And I don't have the recordings anymore because it's been so many computers ago and so many,
right.
hard drives ago. But I distinctly caught a voice that said, yeah, I can hear you. Now I could not audibly hear it in my head at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I did not have headphones on. Some people carry, I did not, and I could not hear it. But when I post editing and loaded it up, I was like, wow, this is totally undeniable. Mm-hmm. And actually the other lady I was talking to you about earlier, she had gone in there as well, and she caught some stuff on her recorder. And I thought that, the audio thing is just phenomenal. Have you ever used the, daggone it. The scanner that skips through all the stations?
Are you talking about the Spirit Box?
Spirit Box, where it rotates through all the channels.
Yes, it cycles through the band, the AM or FM band.
Have you had luck with that?
We have. We've been using the Spirit Box probably for about maybe 12 years or so. When we first started with it, though, I'll be honest with you, I was very skeptical of it. A couple of reasons. Number one, it is radio. You have to remember that.
True that.
And I think sometimes you can hear what you want to hear if you're looking for a specific answer. But having said that, over the course of using it 12 years, there have been some things that have come across that Spirit Box that have been remarkable that we've captured. My preference still to this day when I'm investigating is I still strive to capture straight up EVP using a recorder, asking a question, and capturing that on your recorder without the Spirit Box. But the Spirit Box is a pretty good tool to use because it's actually, if you have a speaker there, it's real time, and so what you're hearing come through the speaker, can prolong exactly the type of questions and where you want to go with the investigation. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it is. And actually, I had one. That got stolen, thank you.
I'm sorry. Well, then we have something in common because I had one stolen too.
I was very up. This was back in the investigation days, and I bought one, and I actually used it here at the shop office that we got here, and I was questioning myself, thinking, no, I didn't hear that. I really didn't hear that because it is, for audience members that have never done it, it is kind of fascinating because it will pick up but the voices are in different tune. They're actually different voices as they come through, and they are sporadic and they're kind of skippy a little bit. And it's kind of like, did I really hear that? Did I? Because you hear it so quickly sometimes that you're like, oh, I don't know about that. But and I get what you're saying kind of with that as well.
Right.
But with straight up hardcore EVPs, that's a different world because what I find very interesting is that our ears cannot audibly hear it. Sometimes we do.
Sure.
But a lot of times you don't. And you're like, well, what translation of wavelength comes through to where a digital recorder can capture it and our audible living eardrums cannot? I mean, I always thought that was incredibly fascinating.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
I thought, yeah.
It is, and it's remarkable. To me, though, I mean, like I said earlier, to do straight up EVP work, to me, it's just a little bit more credible than the box. And don't get me wrong, I am a believer in the Spirit Box, but I think sometimes you can become too dependent upon it and lose track of just doing regular EVP. And for me, that's the top. Anytime you can run a recorder and capture a voice.
Have you had one specific site or place that you've gone to that you find the most active, that sets itself apart?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's going to be Fort Mifflin up in Philadelphia.
Fort Mifflin.
Yep. It's a pre-Revolutionary War fort.
Really?
It was built in the late 1700s. It's known as the fort that saved America. It first came up on my radar. It was on Ghost Hunters, if you remember Ghost Hunters back in the day.
Do.
And they got some phenomenal stuff there. And so I really enjoy history, and that's a part of history I like, the American Revolution. So we went up there in 2009, our first investigation, and I just investigated there for the 14th time 2 weeks ago.
Really?
So it draws me, a lot that draws me there is the history, the amount of history there, dating back to the American Revolution, to the Civil War. This fort actually stayed active till 1960s. In some capacity. Wow. So it has a lot of history throughout, wars and all that. But the amount of activity we've got there have been incredible. Now, they've been casements that they've discovered actually underground through a hole and, find a whole big area that was holding cells, like solitary confinement, where you can go down in these and see where dates and stuff are scratched on the wall and people's names that were executed. And we're talking late 1700s, 1800s, Civil War time. Incredible. So it really kind of resonates. That's the first thing. It resonates for me. It's an easy trip up to Philly. And then we've had an enormous amount of success there with EVPs, Spirit Box. And I think so much now that I've been there so long and I've went so many times, I think there's almost a comfort zone, so to speak.
Well, I have an interesting question, not to break
Sure.
you off too bad.
Yep.
So since you've been there so many times, have you captured voices that you recognize that repeat themselves?
I have, and in the same cadence and stuff. And I'll give you an example.
That is cool.
Yeah, the Powder
really
magazine, cool. Which I actually, would have been back in 2010. I had went in a Powder magazine. If you're familiar with the Powder magazine, and held munitions, you got an Echo. It's like an igloo, so to speak, pretty good size. But I was working alone, and I had went in there, and I was just sitting on the floor up against the wall, and I was firing off a bunch of questions about some of the history, some of the prisoners there, some of the soldiers that had served there. And I also had a hearing aid into kind of an audio, like a parabolic ear, to elevate any audio in hopes of hearing something in real time. So I'm firing off a bunch of questions and really not anything. I'm not hearing anything. It's very quiet. And then all of a sudden, I make the comment after about 25 minutes, I'm going to pack up and leave. And I heard a thank you. And I knew exactly, and it startled me. I scuffled a little bit, and I was like, whoa. And I laughed, and I said, do you really want me to leave? And there was no reply. And immediately my attention went to the recorder, and I think, oh, God, I hope that's on there. And it was. And I've been back in the Powder magazine on several occasions, been there alone with other people, and I've sat down and I've fired off questions again in regards to certain inmates or, soldiers or whatnot. And the last time I was in there, I actually had a whispering that I could pick up on. I could hear it, and they were answering. I just couldn't make out or decipher what was being said. But it was the same, in my opinion, it was the same individual that when I left or was told to leave years ago that said to thank you. It was that same individual, same voice, same cadence,
spooky,
everything. So I don't know who that is. I never figured that part of it out. But yeah, I do think there are some. And then there's another area at Fort Mifflin called the Guardhouse that we've had a lot of success in there with the Spirit Box in particular and some EVPs. Female voice, too, that's come through with a British accent. I've asked, can you say my name? And I'll get a Marty.
Really?
Yeah. And it's the same. It's the same individual. And that's happened on several occasions.
See, I get all excited when you talk to me about this kind of stuff. So I have to ask now. Because
sure.
I'm just going to pick your brain a little bit.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
If the British woman is answering you, you have to assume there's intelligence behind that. She is comprehending your question, and she's retorting with an answer. So I'm like, that just blows me away. I love that kind of stuff. But do you think these people that are living, this British woman, do you think she understands that she's passed on? Or do you or first of all, do you think she understands she's not in year 2024?
I do think so. I
Really?
think so. Just because the enormous amount, well, part of it, the enormous amount of groups that they have come in, the questions and stuff. And, you know, when we first started going there, and even, you know, to this day, we do the typical question and answer. I have a lot of methods I like to use for EVP work. Of course, starting out with a Q&A and stuff. The other thing is, too, I'll just venture off, too, and I'll just play a straight-up card. I'd like to know what it's like where you're at, because someday I'm going to be there as well. And I talk about the equipment I have and what the purpose of it is.
That's interesting. That's a good one, man.
Yep. And sometimes I'll with historical things, I might get something incorrect on purpose to see if it's altered or changed, or if anybody's got anything to speak up. Sometimes I'll just generally talk about myself. And we'll find a lot of times when I'm working with somebody, just general conversation, that where people will jump in. You know, you'll have someone that'll jump in and add something in there. I think a lot of it has so much to do, too, with the energy that you bring, and if it's positive, if it's negative. I think if you're, and I try to be always upbeat when I'm on an investigation. I have what I would say a different, maybe perhaps even warped sense of humor. I carry it with me, but I make no bones about it. When I go to a place, I explain who I am. I like to have a good time. I like for people to laugh and smile, and I hope you enjoy my company while I'm here. And I'd be very appreciative if you want to communicate with me. I have equipment here that can help me possibly capture that, and and I would be very appreciative. But if not, and you wish not to speak, I understand that as well and respect it. So I have a deep respect for the field. But I think a lot of it has to do with the energy you carry and bring with you.
So I can't help it, because as a journalist in me, I have to ask these questions. Where are they then? Where do you think they are?
That's a good question. To the best of my knowledge, just another plane, a plane or realm that interacts and crosses over with where we're at. Exactly.
Well, I tend to think that we share the same space. Mm-hmm. They have to.
I think it kind of interacts and just crosses and merges.
So I think that their existence is in a different dimensional realm, minus a physical body, and perhaps they are still maybe locked into their timeline, and the timelines blend from 1740 to 2024, as long as you've got the same physical space, which you do when you go there. Because I don't know, I have never been there. But I have been down on the East Coast around some forts and stuff like that, which is kind of cool when I was a kid, around the naval shipyards and stuff. That they are kind of coexist between today and yesterday.
Right.
That kind of intrigues me deeply.
You were asking earlier about if I felt these were intelligent, and I do, based on the amount of EVPs and things that we've been able to capture over the years there, the interaction with our questions. I don't think there's anything really there. If it is, it's to a very small degree that would be residual. I think for the most part, most of everything we've captured up there have been intelligent. And I'll give you an example. This was many years ago. This is probably back in 2011. We had an investigation there with 12 people, and I had divided the group up into 4 groups of 3. One of the groups, and this is when my girlfriend was actually actively investigating with us, I put her with 2 other women her age. They were friends. I thought I'd let the 3 women work together.
Sure.
And so they did. The investigation, for the most part, during the investigation was pretty uneventful. There was no personal experiences that really topped out or anything. But when we got home, as is normal custom with Lisa, my girlfriend, and myself, I would always end up doing her review with her recorders or whatever she had. And so I had taken her audio recorder, and I went down to my man cave, and I'm lying there on the sofa, and I'm going through her recordings, and I get a few hours into it, about 3 or 4, and I get to a timeline where it's probably about 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and they're in a soldier's barracks, the 3 of them, and they're not doing a Q&A. They're just doing a conversation amongst themselves. And I really don't even know how to tell you this, but they were doing female talk, and they were talking about you get a little bit older and you put on a little weight and certain body parts start to hang.
Right.
One of these women actually starts singing a song about the ears hang low. Anyways, they're just going on about their own thing, completely clueless. And all of a sudden you hear a male voice, basically right on the top of the recorder, say in a raspy voice, "It doesn't hang on you." And they did not hear it. Absolutely, they were just going on about their thing. And I could tell because I've listened and I've evaluated EVP enough that whatever it was or whoever it was closer to the recorder than they were. It was right up on top of the recorder, and they literally did not know. So when I listened to this, I was like, oh, wow. I went out there, gave Lisa a big hug, let her listen to it, and that was her last investigation.
Really?
She said, I'm done. I'm out. She's not a night person to begin with, and she said, but that really creeped her out. So I've been back there several times, and I've been alone or I've been with another teammate, and I've brought that up. Hey, you wouldn't happen to remember. I haven't had any success with that, but I do. It was definitely an intelligent interaction with them, and I told her, I said, we'll take it as a compliment, And so it's one of our better EVPs. I've played it some on our Spirit Box tours downtown when we play it, depending on the nature of the audience. If we have a lot of young children, then I don't play it. But
exactly.
If we have an older, more mature group, then I play it and I explain in detail, which is what I've told you here.
That is neat.
And I'm thinking of all the things, Lisa. Oh, my gosh.
That is, but it just shows. I mean, I think that is probably... Yeah, that's what really hooks me with that because here again when I was a child, and I've already explained to this, is that I grew up in Buffalo Gap, Virginia, in an actual log cabin.
Oh, cool!
I mean, it was physically dated to the year 1720.
Nice.
In Augusta County, and I remember being just a really young kid. Sleep one night, the TV came. It was a strange freaking night, but anyway. I looked over and I saw a dad and a son in colonial garb, long flowing shirts, vests,
very cool.
And they were actually. It looked like they were composed of cigarette smoke, and I still to this day, and it's been 50 something years. I don't know how old I was. I saw them blink.
Really?
I actually physically saw them just gazing at me like, what are you doing here? I mean, I felt like, I don't know, even at that young stage in my life, that I had the awareness to understand they don't belong here. And maybe they were thinking, I don't belong there. But that was the beginning of this crazy journey that I've been on, and just about every single place that I have been I've dwelled in of any sort, I catch the spirit of whatever's in the building. There's something here as well.
It's very cool.
Oh yeah. It's been here for years. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not the least bit afraid of it. But that wooden door right over there does like to open and close on its own.
Oh, really?
When you're not looking at it. I had a new employee come in, wanted to use the paint room over the weekend, and I think this was a broadcaster too. He explained how, and I told him, I said, buddy, this place, when I first moved into this place, you could catch someone walking across the desk over here, because we've got a big kind of open bay window right there at the reception area here, and walk. It's many times when I first got here, and actually one of the female always equated that he liked women or whatever, because I did have a female employee here for about 2.5, 3 years, something like that, and she often saw this guy in the building, kind of passing through or walking through, thinking it was me. Wow. It's not me. She's physically seen the guy. So, and here again, you kind of go to having the right energy to be able to see a physical being that shouldn't be there, but is there.
Right.
I have heard here, hey you. I've heard that, to where I've stopped what I'm doing, thinking someone is trying to get my attention outside of the building here.
Right.
Because most of the time I paint in the evening time. Therefore, I can shut everything down and lock the door, lock myself in the building so I don't get disturbed. And that is happened years ago when I first arrived here, and since then it's kind of eased up. But I have had people like where you're sitting, and then out there in the paint room around my painting table, you can hear we have these plastic cups, and it'll just knock off, and he's like trying to get your attention.
Right.
Just little weird stuff like that. Another employee here said, "You whistling? I don't whistle." My dad was a whistler back in the, but he was older.
Right.
Bing Crosby kind of, I can't whistle. I'm not even going to try.
Do you know if there's any history here associated in regards to who this might be?
I have a suspicion it was the guy that was here beforehand. Before I was here, he did pass away.
Okay.
I'm not saying he passed away in the shop, but if
Right,
he did,
but-
it's still okay with me. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me. But he was here for a long time.
Right.
One of the interesting things is that when we moved in, I had obtained the building, and when you're moving a business from one location to the other, I sat on this building about a year. Just paid for it, and slowly started integrating everything in. The gas guy came around, and this large office area, even though it's an old building and whatnot, this place had a smell. Kind of like, what is that smell? It was kind of not pleasant. So we killed some walls, painted the floors twice, and started easing up. It started smelling better. And then the gas guy came around and came to check the pipes and whatnot and everything. And I was like, he goes, "Well, the place looks better." I said, "Well, thank you. We've been working on it." And he goes, what did he do? I don't want to mention his name, but I said, "What did he do with all those cats?" He said, "Because there was like 40 to 60 of them."
Oh, wow.
I mean, this guy really got down and diggy with having stray cats. And then the funniest thing, and I'm not the only one that's seen it, is that if you sit out in the paint room, I have seen something very small and dark dart around in the corners.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what? I mean,
Right.
And I'm like you. I am very, scientific based. Everything that creaks or moves or hits the floor, not everything is paranormal.
Sure.
Not everything, because I think that's just a silly way to look at life. But I think that once you eliminate the wind, the possibilities, the conditions, if it's teetering and blah, 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 if you've got a glass sitting in the center of the table and it's been there for 2 weeks and all of a sudden it hits the floor, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what happened there, but something made the glass move or whatever, that kind of thing. So I was like, I don't know. Like I say, I do, I think to be a very good investigator, you need to use a very good scientific approach and eliminate all the possibilities that could have happened,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, you have to be open-minded, but at the same time, too, you have to be practical and to me, search for possible explanations of why something might occur. When you eliminate those, then you get down to what you have left, and a lot of times you're able to validate, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
As far as that activity. It is a process, and I always tell people, at least from my experiences in my journey, I think the best thing in the field, as far as if you're progressing as an investigator, is experience. Because the longer and you do it, the more knowledge you gain. I still learn something every day now, even to this day, and I've done it for so long. But there's always stuff to be learned, whether it be a new technique, equipment. And I remember when we first started investigating, excited about it, but I always felt like it was almost like we were out trying to catch a butterfly. We're always on the move or something. Whereas now we go into this place, we just settle in and relax and let it come to us. If it wants to, then that's fine, and we're able to capture that. That's great. I've kind of I enjoy the history and just the time with our team as well. And I think just trying to portray more, just be genuine with who you are.
Did you happen to mention that you had gone to the Libby Borden house?
I have. I've done Lizzie Borden on 2 occasions. The last was back in 2015.
Okay, you got to tell me about that. That's the Lizzie Borden thing is very historic, very well known story.
Sure.
First of all, I'm going to ask you: do you think Lizzie did it?
Wow. My own personal opinion, I do not, but I do think she knows who did do it. I think it was somebody, a family member. From the explanation, the latest or the last time we were up there, ownership was pretty much on board. Now they do believe she did do it. And their reasoning was because there were some things going on within the household. They cited things such as incest and other things.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am very familiar. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the story. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I lean more toward John Morris, the uncle, as to probably. I think maybe he had some knowledge and some things had been confided to him, and he had someone do it. That was I probably still stand on that, but it's been a while since I've touched base if there's been any latest developments with it. I have
not heard that version of that one. Interesting.
Now, the room where Abby was killed, they've named it after John Morris because he stayed in that room the night before the murders. He had been there at that time.
But it was an extremely brutal attack.
It was.
I mean, brutal.
It was.
I think she was hit, 7 times?
Yeah, on the back of the head. Took a front blow, but didn't to the back of the head as she kind of spun around, and then she collapsed right there beside the bed. When we were there in 2007, it was just Lisa and I. We did a one-night stay. We slept in that room.
How did that go?
Didn't have any personal experiences, but it's interesting because the next morning when you wake up, they serve you breakfast, the same type of breakfast that the Bordens had the day they were killed, which was mutton stew and hot cakes. But we enjoyed it, and I always told Lisa, I said, if I get a chance and to bring the group up here and we have the whole house to ourselves, I'm going to do it. And so in 2015, we had the opportunity, rented the whole house, had it for a night. And very interesting. We had a few EVPs. We actually had one really good clip come through the spirit box in regards to the sofa where Andrew was killed. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's a replica sofa, and I was commenting about it, about how nice it looked and everything. And I said, Andrew, is this your sofa? And the name Lizzie comes through across the box. It's a male voice. It's Lizzie. And pretty clear.
It was a sad story because, she got ostracized after she got
acquitted. She did.
And she lived, I believe, with her sister for the remainder of her years.
Emma. Mm-hmm.
And it was a sad story because she didn't, it's one of those mysteries. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you would wonder if a woman would have that much. Now, I'm a country boy, so I've cut a lot of wood. Mm-hmm. Hatchets, I've used axes, mauls, you name it.
Right.
It takes a lot of force or a lot of anger. Mm-hmm. So if she was being mistreated, is it justification? No, not really. But this is, I believe it was 1897, correct? I think it was.
1892. Actually,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, August the 4th.
I'm off a couple years.
Yep. But I was just reading something on it the other day. That's how it kind of struck with me.
Another really fascinating story was the Vasilia axe murders.
The Valeska axe murders?
Yeah.
I've done that too.
Did you?
Yeah, I've actually been out there on 2 occasions. The first was in 2012.
Really? You have been around, haven't you?
I have. I've done a lot.
Well, they had some... I saw some videos. This has been many moons ago. I haven't even tried to look at the video, but that was the absolute incredible. Mm-hmm. What do you think happened there?
I think, and I'm going to go along with Troy Taylor, who has a book out called Murdered in Their Beds. Mm-hmm. It's an excellent read, but I kind of go with his theory. He believes it was just a wandering individual up to no good that was accessing the railways from town to town. There were a couple other attempts in other cities.
That was what, 19...
It would have been 1912, 10, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's still back in the, not a lot of communication, probably no telephones.
Yep.
And, but I think that it was...
And then the police botched the investigation somewhat. There were some things that were... But that's kind of my theory. I kind of went with that because the main suspects that were accused all had airtight alibis.
Well, then I got to ask you then, have you been to the Winchester house?
I have not. That's on the bucket list.
And then you said, well, I don't blame you, You also indicated you went out to the birdcage.
I did the birdcage. Yeah, that was back in
Tombstone.
2018. Did the birdcage in Tombstone. Loved it. Would love to go back. Matter of fact, I'm sure I will someday.
That's kind of on my bucket list to go out there.
It was incredible. Loved the town. Loved the field. Just everything about it.
Really?
The history was so cool. And yeah, we had the birdcage. Yeah, we had it for the way they did it back then. They rented it out for 6 to 7 hours. And the price was fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
It's a smaller location than people think, though. Even though it
really?
seems like it's big, sound travels. My recommendation, or my thought if we were to do it again, probably a team of 4 would be plenty. If you had more that wanted to go, maybe rent it on back-to-back nights or something. But, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sound kind of travels with it, and it's one of those that, yeah, my recommendation, smaller team, I think you're in better shape with it. But a very enjoyable investigation.
That is, it's just to go there would be wonderful. Just, just to go there and have the experience of just visiting that place. And I'm a Western guy, so
that's cool.
Because I've been eyeballing an 1840 replica.
Nice.
But I don't need it, so I'm not going to get it. So anyway, the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, what do you think, since you've had a lot of years of experience, and I ask just about everybody the same question, what do you think creates a ghost?
Wow. That's a good question.
Yeah, I try to come up with some good ones on occasion, yeah.
You mean as far as like their presence, as far as from moving on?
Well, let's say we take the conventional idea, and I have spent hours and hours, thousands of hours listening to NDEs, near-death experience tales, people that have, and I've known people personally that have passed away and come back, very close people to me. And, you would like to think that when our spirit leaves our body, that we are going to rise up and, they talk about the light, and you basically go to God or go to the next realm.
Right.
I call it the great creator of the universe. I'm kind of a spiritual dude, but go there, to the world of what I call the world of the absolute.
Sure.
And we all hope that no matter how we conducted ourselves here, that we would have the ability to go there and be a part of the communion or the union again from, I believe, that where we come from. Okay. So I've asked other people that are interested in this. So what causes, I have a theory on it, but I'd just like to ask yours. Sure. That someone passes away. Do you think that they just don't go?
Well, I think it's possible that opening may not be there, or they can't find it. I think that's part of it. I think in some situations they may choose not to go. And we do talk about sometimes on our ghost tours reasons why somebody might stay behind. It could be an attachment to a way of life, a loved one, an individual. It could be in some situations where somebody's suddenly struck down, and they do not realize that they're dead. It takes time to put that together and process that. Those are some of the reasons. But we think, I've even said, I've been asked this about graveyards and stuff, and of course I look at it maybe even a personal attachment to the physical body, and not wanting to leave that. A whole I guess range of things. But I think, generally when you hear stories about people seeing the light, obviously they, either they're being accepted or they've been able to find it and discover it easily. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, though. At least that's my best guess at it, or what we kind of discuss somewhat with our ghost tours when people ask that question.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of different. I mean, each situation's different. How you pass, whether you die naturally or in some cases we talk about a lot of times if it's a sudden death. Obviously, if you're going across the street and you get struck by a truck and didn't see it coming and you're killed instantly, I guess what would be left in your mind is you're crossing the street. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely do. I totally...
Your last memory.
Yeah, 9/9 I agree with you. I do think that via accidents that happen so quickly, I often think that people get shocked out of their body because I seem to believe that your initial spirit form, and I've listened to a lot of hours of tapes and stuff like this, is that our spirit form is basically the same form we have here now. And our personality is the same. The way we think is the same. So therefore we think and believe we may be in the same physical space, but we're not. Or we're not alive anymore. So who's to say that isn't still living, which I think in a weird way it sort of is. And I think that all the attachment situations you've got, unresolved business, love attachments, maybe revenge attachments, people that have been done wrong. Especially within court martials and shootings, or in the military. I think that's a tragic situation if someone's caught and they get executed or whatnot. Their reasons for the execution may have just been vengeful, and it was an unjust death. And they hang around for possible revenge or remorse or what have you. And it's sad, I think.
We had a member years ago that had thought perhaps in some situations with people that have done things that have been extremely wrong, whether it be a murder or something, that sometimes maybe trapped in a space, almost like a purgatory, hell on earth, so to speak, where it's just they can't escape it.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I think that every scenario that we can think of is a possibility.
Yeah.
And within my way of thinking is that God, or the great creator of the universe, basically gives us free will. We have free will as an individual. Our existence is of free will. So let's say our physical body dies, and we have the choice. Go, stay. I don't think there are any game rules on the other side. I think that I think that each and every one of us is on an individual journey, because our life is solo.
Sure. There's one last thing that we do mention when we've been asked about that on our ghost tours is too. The other thing is, like you said, kind of almost like free will to go. Maybe some people know that we're to go, but might be afraid of Judgment Day, so to speak.
I totally believe that. I did, yes.
Yeah. So
I think that people are afraid because they know they've done some bad things, and they find a place to be. And it's not a great place, but it's a place to be instead of going off and we have all, especially in North America or in our time frame of society, have been educated with biblical rules and Western Christianity and all that kind of thing that if you do good, you're going to heaven. If you do bad, you're going to go to hell. So I do think that is ingrained in us from the time, and most kids in our region or whatever have been to some type of Sunday school or some type of church sitting or some type of biblical teachings of some sort. And I'm not going to say it doesn't get ingrained in you. It does. Sure. I mean, and people, know, hey, be good or you're going to go to the bad place. So I think that has something to do with it. I've always been incredibly curious about that because I think that if I passed on, which we're all going to go one day, that, I would like to. I do have a very curious nature, so I'm probably going to hopefully go find out what's out there, But then again, I think that some people, we talked about this in the last podcast, and I asked the lady, and I said, because her mother and grandmother had passed on, they had come back to visit, check on the grandbaby kind of thing. So I think that possibly they have the ability to maybe come and visit and then go back. I don't know, but you hear these stories. That's the reason I like the stories, because people tell you, because there's such a different variety of encounters. Some are scary. I've listened to some horrific things where I do think that some of these spirits are just malevolent. They're bad. They want to scare people. They find an area to quote unquote haunt.
Sure.
And they are not friendly. But I think those are the people that are confused. That were maybe bad people. That maybe they're still there because they found a new spot to exist in. And when you got newcomers and they're just, I don't know. I don't know that 100%. I did live in a house one time that I couldn't wait to get the hell out of. And I was with a girlfriend at the time, and we lived in the house. And she was having nightmares, and I was having bad dreams. And that you walked, you just felt I call it the ick in this place. It just happened to have a very dark, depressive type of lingering atmosphere to where, this place just feels...
I've had a few of those myself. Really
off. It doesn't feel like a comfortable zone or a friendly atmosphere, So I forgot what else I was going to ask you. One more thing. I was going to ask you another question. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, have you guys run into malevolent spirits have you guys run into that?
I've not personally, other than a few audio clips that, that probably were somewhat negative in the response. I've been to a couple places, though, like you just mentioned, where I wouldn't care to go back. Places that we've been to, whether it be, just a feeling. I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like the vibe.
You just get kind of a gut feeling.
Somewhat, yeah. And I'm like, I wouldn't care if I went back and did that again.
Yeah.
I've had other people within our group that have had more personal experiences, where they felt like they'd been attacked.
Have you ever brought anything home with you?
To my knowledge, I have not, but that's an interesting question, because when Lisa dropped out of the group, and I joke around about that somewhat, she would tell me, you go ahead, you go play with your equipment, your little friends, and you have as much fun as you want all night long. Just don't bring anybody home with you, and don't play with the equipment in the house. And I just, sure, Lisa, okay. And it's weird because every now and then we've had a little thing that'll kind of spook her, and she'll get on me. Hey, where were you at last? And was it anything bad there? Or, And to my knowledge, though, I mean, I don't feel like I have, but I feel like the potential's there too, if that makes sense.
I think I have had
attachments.
I have had once or twice visiting a place where I think it kind of followed me back. Yep. Because when you wake up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and someone is at the edge of your bed going, "Hey." Yeah. That has happened to me. I had about maybe, time goes by so fast, but about 2 months ago in my place, I was laying in bed one night, and I live alone. I was laying in bed, and all of a sudden in my kitchen, it sounded exactly like someone opened one of the cabinets and pulled all the Tupperware down and scattered. It just hit the floor. And I laid there, and I'm pretty laid back with this kind of stuff. I don't get all crazy at all. And let me tell you how laid back I was. I thought, I'm not going to get up. Mm-hmm. I'm just not going to get up. Because I kind of knew what had happened.
Right.
So I said, nah. I said, just get up, go look, do the right thing. I got up. I walked in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. This happened more than once. And I looked at the floor. I looked at the cabinets. I looked at the table I've got with the microwave, and I thought, look at that. Nothing was out of place.
Wow.
Nothing had been knocked down. Mm-hmm. Now that's like an audio haunting of some sort. I've dealt with that before, because just like this door mm-hmm. opening and closing, I'm not saying that the door is, I think in one dimensionality, yes, it is opening and closing.
Right. Right.
But just like at my place in the kitchen, I think in one dimensionality, something is opening up the cabinets, pulling down all the Tupperware. And you know how Tupperware, hits the cabinets and hits the floor. You know that distinct plastic sound. Mm-hmm. And I was like, really? I was like more annoyed with it. But I'm kind of used to that kind of thing. And I kind of had suspected, because I visited a location and I did see something. I visually see things sometimes. And I thought, well, maybe they got in the van with me and kind of came home and just wanted to kind of, see what I'm up, what I'm about. Mm-hmm. But I think since then it's gone back to where it came from. I didn't have to push it away. It's just that I didn't give it any energy.
Any energy to feed off of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said, no, he's not responding. Because, in my mind's eye, I actually saw this, whatever spiritual situation at the edge of my bed. I knew it was there, and I just was like, I think the average person would have screamed, but I'm like, whatever. I didn't give it another thought. I rolled over and went back to sleep. And that's me.
There you go.
I am actually that laid back with stuff, so I didn't get excited. But I think the average person that is not used to that
right
would have gone, and then it would have gotten worse. Mm-hmm. So
I do think fear can feed that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we always kind of, I know when we went to, depending on the location, where we went to locations where there's a really negative history, mm-hmm. We might talk with people that, that we're going to go on that trip or investigation. If you've got something going on in your life right now, or if you're, or ill or whatnot, it might not be the best time to go. That we kind of felt like they might be more vulnerable to something attaching to them, kind of a weakness, or if you show fear. I try not to play anything into that. I'm not the macho brave guy either, but I stay kind of more focused on the equipment, the evidence, and data part of it.
Well, one more major question, and I'm gonna leave you be.
Oh no, I don't mind.
What's your thoughts? And I'm telling you my thoughts. Do not play with the Ouija board.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I've got a friend that says, "No, let's play the Ouija board." I said, "No," because it is a portal to. It is a portal to opening up yourself to absolutely anything potential.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one interesting thing I will tell you, and it's the only place I've ever noticed it, but when we did the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast back in 2015, they had a Ouija board down in the parlor.
They did not.
A game over on one of the counters, just sat there.
That thing is. Oh, I don't know what's going on. I guess it's me. That thing is dangerous.
Yeah.
And I am hopefully intelligent enough to realize that I do not have the knowledge base to even mess with it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of places will tell you. A lot of places we've been to, you don't bring Ouija boards in. You don't do that. Of course, we don't. We don't mess with anything like that. But I've known several places to have that up on their list of, requirements that you don't bring one in. And I can't imagine somebody that would, but obviously they're looking for something that I'm not.
No,
I put it like that. I'm
not
like I said,
either.
I'm about the evidence and data.
It is absolutely scary to me that you could you could open up something so unmanageable.
Sure.
Because I do believe, unfortunately, I believe this, that there are levels of reality that are more negative and more positive, mm-hmm. and it's part of the spectrum or the reality that we live in, mm-hmm. and it's kind of a necessity, unfortunately, that you have to have opposing forces to live in a three-dimensional relative world that we live in. Mm-hmm. So. Who knows what life's about.
Yeah, to me, that just opens too many doors, and those doors, I don't see them being positive.
I don't either.
Yeah, we don't.
Well, anyway, Marty, do you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
Well, I really been doing this for 25 years, and I still have the passion as if when I first started with this. One of the best things for me is meeting people and sharing personal experiences with people, hearing their experiences and sharing mine. I love doing the ghost tours. We've been doing those now.
I'm going to come. I'm going to come see you on the ghost tour.
Well,
is there a specific time that you call, or just
you
call for
you can check our website, ghostofstanton.com. It has a schedule there. We do tours now year round. I mean, it won't be every weekend, but yeah, we did some back in January. Weather permitting, we're able to get them in. We had a pretty good crowd the end of January. It's kind of sporadic, but when we get into like spring, April, May, we'll have something going on pretty much every weekend.
Well, Stanton is it's an extremely historic town.
It is. I love the history here.
There's a lot of history here, and probably a lot of ghosts still wandering around. I've said that before, But it's been a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm a little bit jealous that you've been to some of the really, really cool places that I have not been, but it's okay. It's okay,
Well, put them on your bucket list. I've got one. My number one place on my bucket list right now is Alcatraz. I want to see it. I just want to see it, experience it, just the history alone.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. Well, anyway, that's it. So thank you very much, Marty.
Well, thank you.
Really appreciate it. So we're going to catch everybody on the next one, and thank you for listening.